Okay. At this point, I'm just picking random shit for videos, but it is what it is. So, footwear for powerlifting, in my opinion. Billion videos on it. I'm not really going to give specifics. I'm mostly just going to give what to look for. And I'm going to put a big disclaimer, not to fall into the same trap I and everyone else has fallen into. Don't worry about it too much. The shoe isn't what's going to make you good at lifting weights. It just needs to be good enough. It does not make that big of a difference. People have done enormous lifts in very suboptimal shoes. I cannot emphasize enough, just don't stress about it. Don't bounce between a billion shoes trying to decide which one's optimal. If you don't have your squat technique optimized, stop worrying about your shoes so much. That's not to say that you should just squat and whatever, right? You should certainly put a little bit of thought into it, but it's not worthy of the level of stress that a lot of people give it, right? So just kind of go in by list. We're going to start with the simplest one, and that's bench. What are we looking for in a shoe? Mostly, we're just looking for something that's not going to slip, right? That would be the biggest thing, especially if you're a heels up bencher. All you're looking for is something that won't slip. Any shoe with good grip is good. That's it. And then if you're a heels down bencher and you compete in the USAPL, there is a bigger caveat there. One might be you want a heel, which is going to let you get into maybe positions more similar to if you were doing heels up, right? That's going to be one thing. And the other thing is you want a shoe that doesn't have the edges come up like this. Oftentimes judges in the USAPL will see that and feel that your foot is coming up when that's just the shape of the shoe, and you can't give them that opportunity. So something like an Audi Power that looks very flush to the floor is going to be your best bet. You just want to don't give them a chance to make a bullshit call. Take that possibility away and wear something relatively flat to the floor rather than something with edges that tend to come up. I've just seen it way too many times to not mention that, right? And then we're going to go to deadlift, right? So if you're conventional, you can get away with a slipper. Really, you'd have to be someone who puts a ton of torque into the ground, really not to like them. And you're just looking at, hey, what's the thinnest shoe I can get? So I'm not pulling any extra distance. And what can I feel the floor through and make sure my feet are active, right? And a slipper serves all those purposes. You could use any other shoe with a thin sole, right? That's going to be my biggest thing, is what's the criteria? The criteria is going to be anything with a thin sole. So, Sabo deadlift shoes, Chucks with the sole ripped out. Just about any minimalist shoe is going to meet this requirement. Obviously, you want to take a look at it prior to buying it. But, you're going to have a lot of options there. But sumo, it becomes a little different because most people who pull sumo aren't the biggest fan of slippers because you're going to roll over the sides even with a tarsal strap, and that's why looking for something that has an ankle, like a high top, to prevent that rolling, or other structural features that are going to prevent that rolling is going to be worthwhile. So that's where wrestling shoes, the Sabo deadlift shoes. I hear that the Barefoot Athletics, they're going to come out with a high top because the fellow that runs the Brazos Valley Barbell, he was talking about how he's really excited for the Barefoot shoes because they've got a wide toe box, you have active feet, they've got a thin sole, blah, 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 blah. But he found that when he went out into his sumo, he was rolling over the sides because there's enough lateral pressure there that you would need a high top. So that's why I'm kind of saying if they come out with a high top, I'd say that's certainly something to look into. You could wear Chucks, but I tend to favor wrestling shoes in that case. And then squat, right? Kind of going through. Obviously, I believe most people should have a pair of heels eventually because they're a training tool, because whether or not you do your competition squat in heels, most people are going to do some sort of quad dominant variation at some point. Heels are going to make those more quad dominant. So you want to look at heel height, right? So you've got the standard 3/4 inch heels. Most of them are that. Most of them are good. Sadly, it's very hard to find a 1/2 inch heel if you're someone who wants a smaller heel. That's something that's very, very hard to find. The Adidas Powerlift 2.0s have a 1/2 inch heel, but they also have very squishy heels, which is okay if you're moderately strong, but if you're very strong, you're going to feel those squishing on your heels, and I wouldn't recommend them, right? And then there's also 1 inch heels, which for powerlifting purposes, I believe are a no-go. I don't really know anyone who uses them, and I would not recommend them, right? That being said, I believe that you should be able to do a technically proficient squat without the heels prior to putting them on. I think that's a very, very important caveat for most people, and a big mistake people make is thinking that heels are going to fix their squat, they put them on, and then they advance more and more without being able to do a technically proficient squat without them. So if you're a beginner and you are like, oh, I'm going to get squat shoes to fix my squatting woes, learn how to squat first, please. That's not the point of this video, but learn from my mistakes, please. You know, that would be the big, you know, what you're looking at with heels. It's just mostly you're looking at heel height. Most of them have a firm heel. Most of them have a reasonable toe box. Tarsal strap doesn't seem to make a difference, in my opinion. You're really just looking at the effective heel height. Make sure you look at effective heel height, not just heel height. It's the difference between the height of the toe and the height of the heel. And then I would say as far as flats goes, that's a more complicated one. The wider you are, the more likely you are to want a high top to prevent laterally rolling over the sides, as I mentioned. If you're a narrower stance squatter, you might be able to get away with slippers. I know a reasonable number of people can't, though, even from a narrower stance, because they're spreading the floor or torquing their feet into the ground to a degree that the slippers start to give them problems, in which case, you know, high tops that don't interfere with your ankle mobility might be an option, or just any shoe. That's where like the barefoot athletic shoes look good. Most minimalist shoes, especially if you can afford them, like the Vivo barefoot shoes, look great. Yeah, I'd say minimalist shoes are the move. If you can find a good pair that you feel are structurally sound enough to be lifting heavy weights in, I think that's a very good move. I think they're better than the traditional just ripping the sole out of a chuck. You know, obviously you can also use wrestling or boxing shoes as well. I find that those work very well, but if you're someone with a somewhat wider foot, the narrow toe box is going to give you at least some problems. That would be my general recommendation. Kind of a rambling video, couldn't come up with anything to talk about, so that's what I did.